So I mentioned this afternoon when we started that I'm in the business of promoting sustainability through gamification. And our next speaker has been doing just that. Peter Shaw from JDPower and Associates is working with large utility companies to get people to reduce their energy consumption. And this is an example of when gamification really matters. It's not just about play online, it's also about real-world change to promote a better world. So please join me in welcoming Peter to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? So I'm going to talk about energy and how game mechanics are beginning to be put in place to transform customer experience of their energy usage. It's a really big deal for utilities. I'm going to talk about the business problem that utilities are facing and why these game mechanics are going to be extremely important to the future success of this industry. So it is a big, big deal. We all know, having grown up with electricity kind of always available, turning the lights on, turning the lights off, pretty reliable. It's a low involvement category, right? For decades, we've become accustomed to paying a bill once a month. We don't pay a lot of attention to the bill. It's kind of a mystery bill that comes to us at the end of the month. Most customers don't really understand the bill. And it's not a very good vehicle for driving engagement around how am I using energy today? Where am I wasting my energy? How can I better manage my energy use so I can lower my bill? It's a low involvement category, and that's a problem for utilities. Because utilities are being asked to green up. For the better part of the last century, utilities were asked to do two things: provide power at a reasonable, affordable rate, and keep the lights on, and make it available to everyone without exception, universal service prerogative. Well, now they're being asked to also do it more sustainably. And that's a major transformation that is coming down the throats of the utility industry. It's not just the big solar and wind farms that we're familiar with that are changing the way we're generating power in central stations. It's also customer-owned renewable generation and big federal programs to promote customer-owned generation behind that meter. That means the grid itself is going to be under tremendous pressure to handle all of this new kind of power flow that's actually going in two directions. And the power grid is not presently designed to accommodate that. So part of what is happening to this industry is it's deploying what's called the smart grid. Quick show of hands, how many of you are somewhat familiar with this idea of a smart grid? So that's good. Most of you are. I won't go into a lot of detail about what the smart grid is, but enough to say that the smart grid is a technology change agent for the customer experience. It's obligating utilities to get much smarter about how they're going to deploy all of these great devices and technologies that are enabled by this idea of a smart network and give the customer a new experience and ultimately allow the utility to harness the demand resources that are on the other end of the electric pipe. So part of what this whole smart grid infrastructure is the smart meter. Some of you may be in a service territory served by a utility that's already put in a smart meter, replacing that old mechanical meter. It's often said that Alexander Graham Bell, if he came back today, would be amazed at how telephonic devices and networks have changed. If Tom Edison came back at least a few years ago and looked at the electric meter, he'd be very comfortable with that. A mechanical device that hadn't really changed in a very long time. That is a major sea change for utilities to have a two-way communicating device at the meter that can send signals to appliances in the home and go right back to the central station or to an enterprise software server sitting in the utility enterprise. So big deal for the utility industry. So utilities are now kind of owning up to the fact that they're going to have to change the conversation that they have with customers. It's not going to be good enough anymore to send a bill once a month. They're going to have to almost reboot their image and their relationship with customers. And that's why utilities are starting to do things like promoting their brands, which they've never really done a whole lot of in the past. So you have companies like Florida Power and Light that are busy putting new campaigns, education campaigns together, doing things like asking customers to compare the price of an energy drink or a cup of coffee from Starbucks with the cost of electricity use in a day. People don't think about the value of the electricity. They don't think about the fact that Xboxes are made possible by electricity. Everything in this room is run off electricity. That is not something that customers have a lot of appreciation for, and they don't think about it very often. So we got this smart grid thing that's happening. Federal government, through the ARRA money in 2008, goosed the development of the smart grid with a $3.5 billion set of grants to utilities and the technology vendors of the world to start promoting and installing all the pieces of this ecosystem. So a smart grid is essentially like bolting an internet onto the power grid. It's sensors all along that network on a telecommunications data network that is driven by software that makes sense of all of that data and hopefully makes the utility more effective at managing their network and provides new information through tools to customers so they are more engaged with their energy usage and ultimately can help solve the country's energy problems. So big deal for utilities to get smart meters installed, but then here's the thing. A smart meter does not make a smart customer. It doesn't make the house smart. It doesn't make the use of energy one bit smarter. You've still got to take the information that's available now on this wonderful smart grid network, present it in a way to customers that makes sense to them, and then motivate them to take advantage of the tools, and hopefully end result being there's going to be a better, more efficient use of energy, which is part of our overall energy objectives as a country. So big deal for the industry. We've just gotten started on this. Maybe $12 billion invested so far in the smart grid. That is going to take about 20 years to fully build out, and estimates of $400 billion to $800 billion to complete this smart grid. And if the utility industry, along with the government and other partners in this big infrastructure enterprise, if they fail to get customers at the end of the pipe interested in all these great new tools and information sources, if they fail to bring them to the party and get them participating, this thing is going to fail. So the stakes are really big for utilities. The government is very concerned about getting customers engaged. So there is a lot of work being done to understand how are we going to get that done. In essence, the grid, if you will, looks at a house or a building as a virtual power plant. Because when the demand goes up on the grid on that hot summer afternoon, well, you can either turn a power plant on and feed more electricity into the grid so there's a balance in supply and demand, or you can go and reduce demand on the grid. From the grid's perspective, there's a parity there. The question is, how do you harness that demand side effectively while providing customers the continuing needs they have around reliable power and a good, wholesome customer experience along the way. So it's a big issue, but customers are essentially virtual power plants. So the utilities industry is looking at how we can develop new programs, provide customers with tools, thinking about the pricing dimension, thinking about new ways of providing information, automating things behind the meter. The term smart home or home automation is part of all of that. But that's the challenge for the industry to figure out. Designing those programs and then motivating people to take advantage of it is no small task. As I said, the technologies are what is making a lot of this possible. It's smart meters, it's appliances that are going to be equipped with chips that the minute they're rolled into the front door, that will be visible to a home area network. Talked about customer-owned generation. What about the plug-in electric vehicles? You know, we're going to be buying those things, and we're going to be having charging stations in our garage, and that car is now going to communicate with the grid. It's going to communicate with our smart meter and our home energy management systems. So this ecosystem is really getting built out, and it's not just utilities who are involved, it's multiple industries who have an interest in making this information meaningful to customers. So traditionally, utilities have done a lot of things to try to get customers sensitized to that they should be energy efficient, that they should give a damn about when they use energy, how much they use. Traditionally, the government has been involved by setting standards like appliance standards, or if you think about cars, cafe standards, fuel efficiency. Plenty of efforts by the government to improve the efficiency of all of the devices that are getting plugged in, and developing things like the energy guides that we're all familiar with. What was that? That was a way of educating and engaging customers and thinking about their choice of an appliance, say. Utilities for years have used rebates. The economics of that was that they figured, well, if we want people to buy high-efficiency air conditioners and refrigerators, we'll give them a rebate to cover the cost differential. That was essentially about as creative as they got in terms of mechanics to get people to change behavior. They've toyed with doing things like installing things for free. Plenty of programs that you can call the utility. They'll send someone out to your house, they'll caulk it, they'll put in compact fluorescent lamps, they'll put in high-efficiency shower heads and the like, all to try to get people to be more energy efficient, which is the objective of the utility. Also, the pricing dimension has been important. Lots of experiments have been run around taking the average cost of kilowatt hours, which is what your rate is today and what we're all accustomed to, and making that a time-based rate that reflects the marginal cost to produce that power at any given time. Real-time pricing, time-of-day rates, those have been experimented with for years. Now with the smart meters and this idea of a smart grid, in the future, those will become your default rates. Everyone will have access to a number of different kinds of rates based on time of day and based on your proclivities in terms of how you use energy and what your lifestyle preferences are, that you'll be able to choose the rate that best works for you. The government's still involved in trying to get consumers engaged. They pushed this idea of a green button. What's the green button? Green button initiative is the challenge by the White House to the industry to say, come up with a button that allows a consumer to push that button, probably on the website of the utility, and get their data. Or for a third-party application developer to now be able to get that data in a standardized format, that should unleash innovation and make that customer end of the pipe now engaged with their smart meter. DOE ran a real interesting pilot competition, threw it out to the industry and said, app developers, bring us apps that would leverage this idea of the green button. If you Google DOE green button, you'll be able to read up on the winners of that competition. A lot of innovation going on now in this space, providing customers with these tools that are meaningful to them and hopefully will engage them. So still, apps are being developed, the information is becoming available. How do we get customers to pay attention? Let me ask you an honest question. How many of you actually would say that you feel like you're highly engaged with your energy use at home? That you think about it often and you can predict how much you're going to use any given month? Not too many people really feel that way. The objective of the industry and with the smart grid is to get you engaged and make it easy to do that. Nonetheless, we still need to provide customers with reasons to do this. So JDPower in the last year, we conducted a nationwide, wide-scale research study of energy behavior, residential, sort of consumer residential energy behavior. We came up with 6 segments that characterize the different ways that people currently prefer to manage their energy use. And what we find is that there are real differences in energy management behaviors that cut across, by the way, things like demographics, income, age, some of these things you'd expect to be kind of highly correlated with habits around energy management. Not so much the case. Energy behavior really is driven by a lot of things beyond the kind of house you live in or what your degree is. So now that we know something about our customers that we've never really appreciated before, what do we do with that information? And how do we start engaging customers to think about their energy use, given that customers are kind of in different places today relative to their relationship with their energy? So What we've also found is that about 12% of US households are what we call pretty proactively already ready to engage in thinking about and managing, optimizing their use of electricity. About 20%, however, are really not even close to thinking about it. They'd kind of rather be left alone to consume as much energy as they can afford, and they're going to be very difficult to engage. Then you've got, after those two tails, a big cluster of people in the middle that are kind of there, but gee, energy is really not a priority. There are a lot of other things that take up their time and give them pleasure. So getting them engaged is no small trick. We also researched a number of different kinds of service options or tools and applications that customers may be interested in enrolling in on this road towards becoming more engaged with their usage. And what we found, kind of interestingly, is that of all the things we test, the number one program idea that resonated with customers in this nationwide survey was giving them the chance to earn points for reducing their usage. Now, we didn't wire it this way, even though I was delighted to see that as the outcome. But that is, in fact, very telling, we think, about where consumers are today. And what we're telling the utility industry is, guys, you have to get serious about delivering a message to customers that goes beyond the promise of bill savings as a reason to get engaged with thinking about managing energy. You've got to give these people something that is tangible and that gives them a sense of some accomplishment, because it's very difficult to see the bill savings. If you ever thought about, you've done something at home, you get the bill the next month, I don't know if I saved any energy. Very difficult to tease that out. So you've got to give people something tangible, perhaps extrinsic, perhaps intrinsic, but we've got to get beyond the idea of, well, it's about reducing your bill over time. We also tested a number of other things, and if you look at the research, what you find is that what customers really want is to clear the fog. Just clear this fog that I'm in about my energy. I don't have any means to really understand where my energy is being used, how much am I wasting. I just can't see it in the kind of data that the utility company gives me today. So what is it that bothers customers? They hate that monthly mystery bill. I know I do. They cannot relate how much they're using to the bill amount because the rates are very difficult to begin with. They don't know really how to identify where they're wasting energy. They're not getting very much in the way of feedback, rewarding them, or even recognizing, giving them a means to acknowledge how they're having some success to the extent that they're trying to manage and minimize the waste of electricity. They want information that they can use, and they don't want raw data. They want answers that they can actually leverage and hopefully monetize in the form of reduced usage or optimal comfort. And then finally, the utility industry is just beginning to really appreciate that utility customers don't talk the way utility people talk. I mean, if I polled everyone in the room, what is a kilowatt hour? You know, I mean, who knows what that is, right? It's not like going to filling up your gas tank, and you can see the numbers go by, and I've got this number of gallons, and it cost me this much, and I'm good to go. Kilowatt hours are a very esoteric thing, even for people in the industry. It's just not an easy thing to get people to feel too attached to. So key ingredients for energy engagement as we see it: providing information, putting things in context for customers. Ultimately, it requires challenging them and rewarding them for good efforts. So when we look at how this whole world of gamification and game mechanics are being applied to energy, it really gets to the very things that are being used in game scenarios in multiple industries. Things like supersized incentives, different ways of applying social pressure to get people to care about thinking through their energy usage, giving access to free things, social comparison. How many of you have heard of the company Power in this space? About a third of you came out of the gates with an innovative model using consumer psychology, normative influence modeling, to get people to care about their usage by comparing them with peers. most programs are now embedding some aspect of that in their programs because it's proven highly effective. Accomplishments, showing customers where they're accomplishing and how much they're accomplishing along the way. So the game mechanics are pretty well understood. It's really how to apply this to a very low engagement, low involvement thing like energy that is the trick. And furthermore, how do you measure the success of these programs? Well, for utilities and the research that we do with companies, it really gets to, first of all, understanding, are customers getting value? Is their customer experience improving? Are the programs that we're talking through here increasing enrollments in utility programs? And as a result of people enrolling in these new programs, are they actually reducing their usage? Are they actually shifting usage from high peak times to low peak times? And overall, is this improving their relationship with their utility? Are there satisfaction, favorability scores that they're, with their utility company, are those in fact changing? So that's a key role for JDPower in the industry to understand the consumer perspective as these game programs are rolled out. So there's a lot of innovation going on. How many have heard of the Nest thermostat? How many actually have a Nest thermostat? Okay, a few of us. This is another game changer. It's taking the idea of the boring thermostat and making it meaningful to customers in a way that was never done before. O-Power, or working with lots of utilities, providing data to customers, beginning to work with other companies, including Facebook, to provide social game applications for energy usage. Companies like My Energy, companies like Efficiency 2.0, and a company that's been active here in California called Simple Energy, which has some very interesting programs going on down in San Diego. They're using all of the game mechanics that we just talked about, and they're using all the channels and devices that customers like to use to engage customers in basically challenges and games. They have a program they're launching right now called San Diego Energy Challenge. This is one to watch because it is one of the first really large-scale efforts by a utility to use game mechanics to engage a large, scaled-up number of customers. And if it is successful, if it can yield the kind of savings that a recent pilot program had, then we're kind of off to the races. I think we'll hit a tipping point in the industry where utilities will begin to appreciate and acknowledge the role of game mechanics in their customer engagement programs. So real quickly, I know I'm running out of time, they ran a pilot program in San Diego. They called it the biggest energy saver. Customers who participated in that limited pilot, average reduction in usage 20%. You can't point to a program utilities have run that have achieved that kind of numbers that quickly. So very impressive results. They have a program now they're calling the San Diego Energy Challenge. It's using programs through the schools to get the kids to bring the information home and getting homeowners and customers of San Diego Gas and Electric engaged in monitoring their usage and reducing their usage over time. Typical kinds of prizes, supersize incentives, drawings for iPads and iTunes gift cards and so forth. So lots of different kinds of rewards being utilized. Also using things like social comparison, more of an intrinsic model. They're combining those together. So it's, you know, when you talk about energy, it's such a challenge to get people to think about that stuff. It's kind of all of the above strategy to get people who are all kind of showing different proclivities, different inclinations to engage, needing different kinds of motivational triggers. You've got to cover the entire population. It's not a targeted program. You want everybody involved, so you've really got to use all the arsenal at your means. As I said, they're using obviously the web portal, mobile, but they're including social and they're including messaging in the platform. Here's the mugs of the winners from the pilot program. The top group, the family up top, was pleased because even though they didn't win one of the iPads, they saved more than enough energy through the program to buy an iPad and then go to Disneyland. So big win for them. So I wanted to give you a flavor for how game mechanics are changing the way utilities are approaching customers and why that's a big deal and we should all be paying close attention to it. So thank you very much and I hope you have a great conference.